We have said that sustainability is a key part of our new strategy, right? It's the heart of what we're going to be doing. What's the news angle you're looking at? Is it sustainability on farms? Is it sustainability on packaging? Is it sustainability in our factories?
We're talking about climate change, water quality, potential longevity for our farmers. Are those topics that you believe Fonterra would like to comment on?
We get these requests all the time, Chris. We've got people here who've got a business to run.
What angle are you taking? How's it going to work?
We want to hear every side of the story, basically.
There aren't sides to the story. There's only one story. I'm assuming that's the angle you're taking because that's the only angle. That is the truth of the situation.
Kia ora, I'm Chris. This is where I'm from, the rural north of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Surrounded by nature and fortunate to have the family home next to our local river, Mangatawa. Growing up, we tried our best to protect and live with the land. We grew a lot of our own food and raised all the animals you'd expect to see on a farm. Chickens, goats, pigs, sheep, and cows. Like most Kiwi kids, I started the day with milk on my Weet-Bix and never thought twice about it. I was already worried about the state of our planet when I came across this film. Cowspiracy showed how animal agriculture is the driving force behind the environmental breakdown that's happening, and how people were too afraid to talk about it. I was shocked, but I thought, that's America, not Aotearoa. We have grass-fed cows and look after our land. And then I saw the Environment Aotearoa report, showing the massive impact dairy is having on our country. I made a video about the dairy industry that got a big response on social media. Let's hear what Fonterra has to say now. And I was surprised when Fonterra commented, inviting me for a coffee and a chat. But when I tried taking them up on the offer...
Welcome to Fonterra. After the tone, please record your message. After the tone, please record your message. After the tone, please record your message.
Why the change of heart? What did our country's biggest company have to hide? I wanted to meet with some people who were speaking out about the environmental impacts of the dairy industry and see what they could tell me.
Industrial dairying is this country's biggest polluter. It's our biggest climate emitter, emitting more greenhouse gases than our entire transport sector. It's our biggest water polluter, and it's also a major stressor for biodiversity and for soil health. Around the world, we've seen a massive increase in a thing called oceanic dead zones. They're basically areas of the ocean where there's been so much algal growth, there's no oxygen, there's no life in there anymore. That is what we're risking on New Zealand's coastlines.
We're seeing a collapse of our natural ecosystems. Most of that collapse is coming about because of the pressure that we're putting on those systems from commercial activities like dairy farming. The consequence for nature has been devastating.
New Zealand used to be a land covered in forest. We've bowled down forest. We've lost the biggest chunk of wetlands in modern history in the last 100 years to put more cows on paddocks.
I discovered that in Aotearoa, our dairy industry creates more greenhouse gas emissions than all cars, trucks, boats, planes and trains combined. And although we brag about producing the most sustainable milk in the world, the total emissions from our booming dairy industry has increased 132% in the last 30 years. 132%. It's a global problem too. The top 5 meat and dairy companies, which includes Fonterra, produce more emissions than the whole of the United Kingdom and its 66 million people. That's also more than the oil and gas companies ExxonMobil, Shell and BP. One study even showed that in the next decade, Fonterra will make up more than 100% of New Zealand's total emissions target. And yet, no one seemed to be talking about this. Dr. Jane Goodall is one of many well-known scientists who have been warning about the impacts of climate change long before it was all over the media.
If you consider we're on this little ball, this little beautiful planet of ours, and we're now surrounding it with these so-called greenhouse gases, which is trapping the heat of the sun, which is leading to the changing weather patterns that are being so destructive to the environment, to people, and to many, many animals.
And while the worst is yet to come, the balance of life on the planet is already way out, with farmed animals and humans making up 96% of the biomass of mammals, and only 4% is wild mammals. I also found out Aotearoa has the highest proportion of threatened native species on Earth.
No wonder we have a biodiversity crisis. I'm not angry at the farmers, I'm not blaming the farmers, they do what they have to do, and most of them do really care about the environment, but the system that they're caught up in is totally flawed. Just sticking to what we're doing now has no future.
Then I discovered that change might happen in a totally unexpected way. A major international report from Rethink X predicts that making real dairy without cows will wipe out the global dairy industry by 2030. Once it's cheaper than dairy from cows, big companies like Nestle could switch their milk powder supply to the animal-free version, and our milk powder exports could be doomed. I was blown away by everything I'd learned and the fact that the government still seems to be in denial about it. That means we're not preparing, and neither are other countries. It was clear to me that we're in big trouble if we don't take this seriously and make urgent changes. It turns out that Aotearoa New Zealand, the US and the EU account for nearly half of all global dairy production, and these governments are also in the best position to help farmers transition out of dairy, saving our economy and our environment.
We need to support our farming communities to transition. I think it is unfair for decades to have encouraged them to go into intensive dairy and then expect them to somehow tomorrow switch.
Support people to actually, change. We are all products of where we've come from and the life we're born into, but we don't have to continue this way, and we want to live here, so clearly living means not dairy farming, because dairy farming's not really living. I think we've just stumbled onto this fantastic crop for our region. Pumpkins just seem to be a boomer around here, absolutely boomer. We're hoping that pumpkin seeds will wipe the floor with dairy. Well, if it bet dairy farming out, return-wise, why would a farmer not do it? I can't imagine why they would be so bloody minded about milking cows forever. I think I'm coming into a good space now. And it's been the move away from dairy farming, definitely. With the future generations, I think the farm will be in good hands. The land will be in good hands,
I'd heard of a dairy farm near Wellington that's making a transition to growing organic vegetables. Cameron Family Farms is owned by filmmaker James Cameron and his wife Susie.
We bought our farm in the Wairarapa in 2011. We had 2 dairies within the farm, and one of them being a very successful dairy. Even though I had been in the environmental sector for decades, no one had ever mentioned anything about animal agriculture. They had talked about dead zones, ocean acidification, deforestation, biodiversity loss, et cetera, et cetera. If you put animal agriculture in the middle, you can put all of those things around the outside and they all connect. I didn't know any of this. And in May of 2012, we went plant-based and realized that our dream to have this beautiful organic dairy organization didn't seem like the right way to go. So we closed the dairies down. So now we grow organic veggies. You need less land, you need less water, you need less inputs, It's a much more efficient way of growing food. And most recently, the thing that has come up that should probably be the #1 thing on our radar right now is pandemics. So 75 to 80% of all diseases that have been created because of the exploitation of animals.
Is this a change that you think other dairy farmers in the area could also take on?
One of the things that we noticed very early on was just how quickly New Zealanders can pivot. Plant-based food products are the largest growing sector within the food sector around the world. People have to be able to do it in a way that it's lucrative. It also has to do with being able to look at themselves in the mirror at the end of the day, knowing what it's doing to the land, knowing what it's doing to people's health, knowing what it's doing to the animals. Even if it was healthy to eat animals, there is no way that we can feed humankind by eating animals.
No wonder we already have a world hunger issue. It's partly to do with how we're using the land. 1 acre of land can produce 15 times more protein from plants than the same area of land used for farming animals. We're also using over 3/4 of the world's agricultural land for farmed animals and to grow food to feed them.
Just imagine more grain today is grown to feed our farm animals than starving people. You know, what we're doing now doesn't make sense. We need a whole new way of thinking.
In 2019, world-leading scientists from across the globe came together to answer this question. Can we feed a future population of 10 billion people a healthy diet within planetary boundaries? They discovered that without a global shift to a plant-based diet, today's children will inherit a planet that's been severely degraded, and where much of the population will increasingly suffer from malnutrition and preventable disease. From everything I'd learned, it wasn't just dairy that we needed to move away from consuming. It was all animal products. If everyone ate a plant-based diet, we'd free up land area greater than the size of Africa. A lot of the world's farmland could be returned to native species, an effective way of storing carbon and increasing biodiversity at the same time. In New Zealand, going plant-based would reduce our dietary emissions by over 40%, along with saving the healthcare system up to $20 billion over our lifetime.
Every time you put plant-based food on your plate, you're doing something good for your health and for the environment and for the animals. It will not matter if we have electric cars or if we have sustainable clothing to wear, if we don't do something about our environment. And that is a huge piece of it, to be able to shift away from animal agriculture.
For me, dairy was a normal part of life growing up in New Zealand, so it's been a disturbing journey coming to understand that milk isn't the wholesome product we're led to believe it is, and that animal agriculture is damaging our future in so many ways. But I have hope for a different future. Instead of continuing down this doomed path, we could grow healthier and more sustainable plant-based food from less land, rewild the land we gain back, and live ethically with all life on this planet. Companies like Fonterra will have to decide which side of history they want to be on, to keep hiding from the truth or to work together on solutions.
We all each have a responsibility, because every day we live, we make some impact on the planet. We have a choice as to what sort of impact we're going to make. And if billions of people make ethical choices every day, even small ones, that's going to lead to change. And eventually, the impossible will have become possible, and we'll change the world.